All right, so we're on to 4.2. For the second part of Project 4, you're writing a progress memo in which you describe the specifics of the usability test you are going to run for your client. Though generally you can and should and will follow Krug's scripts and advice in the book, for each section, I want you to change or add at least one thing to be sure you're responding exactly to this assignment. So the goal of each section of this memo is to explain both what you are doing and why you are doing it. As always, assume that you are writing for a client that doesn't know anything about usability, and be sure that you use an appropriate memo format. You can use the below links here to be sure that you are using a correct memo format. Also, in this week's readings, I have a student sample, so you can hop in there and take a look at the way the student sample formatted this particular document. So this assignment's going to be due on April 22nd at 11:59 p.m. There are going to be 6 parts to this assignment: the introduction, the scripted intro, the homepage tour questions, design scenarios, there will be 2, a waiver form, and a calendar. Again, you can take a look at what all of these look like within the student sample I provided in this week's readings. You're going to be testing 1 participant, remember, not 2. The test is going to take about 45 minutes. You're going to make this document as specific as you can so that running the actual test will be a breeze, and the majority of the information for this document will be found in Rocket Surgery Made Easy. So you're going to just be copying a whole lot of text and adding tiny little tweaks. So in the introduction, you need to answer the question, what is the purpose of this memo, and what does it include? What is the basic test you're going to run? Explain to the clients what the Think Aloud protocol is. Explain what types of data you hope to collect. You need to explain the roles of each group member, what types of encouragement you're going to provide and avoid to make sure that you are creating unbiased results. And you need to explain what type of technology you're going to use as you run the test and why. So remember, it's all explaining exactly what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. For the scripted intro, you are just going to explain what you'll say when the test starts, the demographic questions you're going to ask, the questions you'll ask to gather data about the basic layout of the site. And this actually needs to be a written script that you're going to read during your real usability test. You're also going to include your home page tour questions. So what are the basic questions you will ask to get your participant to start talking about the page? And then your design scenarios, you're going to give me 2 scenarios, as well as a description of the tertiary tasks at the scenario test. So describe to me how the scenario has been designed in the ways that they have. So let's talk about scenarios real quick. When you're creating scenarios, you're just creating realistic activities or tasks for your users to perform during the usability test that engage the possible errors of the site. So you start with the goals of the website and think about what those are, and you craft a scenario around that. You'll put those goals into a realistic context, but you'll also add constraints. So you imagine where the user might get lost, or ways that you can kind of predict ways that the user can get lost or not navigate the site well. You need to think about the user goal. So to browse a product offering or product offerings and purchase an item. So this is the user goal. How do we create a scenario? So let's assume we're looking at a certain sporting goods store website. So a poor task would be purchase a pair of orange Nike running shoes. A better task is going to be buy a pair of shoes for under $40. So this gives them a task that a user is often going to be looking for, and it also tests a few different components of the site. It's going to be, can they find shoes easily? Is there a category or some navigation to shoes? And then also, is there any kind of pricing tool that they can use, or the gauge where they can say purchase shoes for X amount or under X amount? So this is testing a few tertiary tasks that this type of website needs to include for the specific user and user goals. So this is what you need to think about as you're thinking about crafting your own scenarios. And you want to place some kind of realistic emotional or psychological pressure on your usability subjects by telling a story. Well, as you do this, you're going to avoid clues in your scenario. So you don't want to mention the names of the section of the websites or links. They need to find those. That's what you're testing. When we say emotional or psychological pressure, that doesn't mean that you're doing something that creates stress, right? You're creating a scenario that they have some kind of constraints to work within. So let's look at an example scenario. The spring semester is coming to a close and you're planning on moving to a new house across town with 4 roommates. Only one of you has a car and you all decide that it would be too much of a hassle and too much gas money to try to drive back and forth in that one car. One of you suggests it would be easier to rent a truck for the day to move across town. You remember neighbors from back home used to hire Penske trucks to move across town to their new home, and you suggest to the group that they are a reliable company to rent from. The trouble is, you don't know where the nearest truck rental site is near where you live. Without using the search bar, try and locate what location you would rent your truck from in your area. So notice how this scenario gives context. It creates that emotional or psychological pressure. They're moving, they're talking their friends into hiring this. So this is what we mean by this emotional or psychological pressure, that we're not actually putting pressure on the user as they're doing the test, but we're creating kind of a constraint there. And then they have this certain task that they need to do, and you're testing how they can do that. And as you're doing that, you're thinking about the company itself, what users often need, and possible kind of glitches that you could find within this website. So these are all the things that the scenario needs to take into account to actually test the usability of the website. And so finally, the other components are going to be a waiver form, which again, you're going to get that from Krug, and you're going to see that in the student sample. And you're going to give a calendar, which is just a timeline of events. So when are you going to do your test? What is each person on the team going to do? You're literally going to say what each person is going to do. In the sample, I have all the names marked out in orange, but just so you know, when you see orange, that's a name, so you know that's them breaking down who's doing what. For the usability test, whose computer you're going to use, where you're going to run the test, does someone have QuickTime, do you have access to a Mac, who are you going to ask to be your test participant? When will you begin writing the final report? And when will the final report be delivered? So you're going to break down all these parts. And to give you a really good idea of what that looks like, just check out that sample there. So again, for the most part, you're going to get all of the information, or a bulk of the information, from Krug. You're going to really rely on Krug to craft this entire thing, and you're just going to make tweaks that respond specifically to this assignment. So be sure that you're using Krug, look to that student example, and this should not be as time consuming as it seems, because I do know we don't have a whole lot of time to do it. And if you have any questions at all, just let me know.